Hey gang, welcome back to another video. Now adding a bit of motion to an otherwise static display can be a real game changer, but it doesn't have to be difficult. So in this video I'm going to show you how to make a simple pop-up mechanism with just a few tools. So let's get to it. Before we get into the build, let's take a quick look at some of the parts we'll be using. All of the wood pieces are 1x3s cut at 17, 14, 8, and 4 inches, as well as a synchronous motor and 3 nylon patio door rollers. The motor can hang out for a bit while I build the main structure of this mechanism, starting with installing the rollers. The rollers are designed to hold a vertical rod in place and allow it to slide up and down, so I've drilled 3 holes roughly a ½ inch from the edge of the board and spaced a few inches apart to mount my rollers. I'm attaching the rollers with a 2-inch screw as well as 5 washers that are acting as spacers so that there's room for the hardware that will be attached to our push rod, which I'll be getting into a little later in the build. This location and spacing of your rollers will depend on what width and length of material you use, but you want them spaced out so that whatever you use for the push rod will fit between them and can move freely. Speaking of the push rod, I grabbed some 1/2-inch flat stock aluminum and cut it into 3 pieces: 3½ inches, 5 inches, and 15 inches. They're held together with a screw, 3 washers, and a lock nut, with the washers placed between each surface to keep them from binding up. Now that the push rod is assembled, we can move on to attaching the base for our mechanism. Rather than measure, I like to use the parts to determine their placement and then mark it out with a marker. The same goes for screws. These are just barely sticking out, and I'll use them to mark the location where I'll drill the matching holes, since this lumber is prone to splitting. With the first piece attached, I'll add on the last piece that will make up the foot of our mechanism. However, this time, I'll be using pocket holes to join them. The last piece to add is the motor mount. I've attached the motor to the 4-inch piece of wood and will use it to help determine its final placement. But first I need to attach the push rod. Having this all assembled will help me to make sure that everything fits correctly before I make anything permanent. So I'll thread the push rod between the roller wheels and then mark where the motor mount should go, and we'll pre-drill and screw it in place with some 2-inch screws. The last thing to do is to connect the motor to power. So off camera, I stripped the ends of a power cord and connected it to the motor wires with some wire nuts. Now I just need to plug it in. Now this mechanism can be modified to run either vertically or horizontally, and can be used as a standalone or integrated into a larger prop. So get creative. Well, that's going to do it for this one. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, but most importantly, go make something.